Welcome to Meet the Candidates, a forum for candidates running in the November 8th general election. This segment of the forum is for Senator in District 31. I'm Carrie Lund, Executive Director for the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, who co-sponsor Meet the Candidates with the Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids Area League of Women Voters. All candidates were invited to this forum. The Chamber of Commerce and League of Women Voters do not support or oppose any political parties or candidates for office. The League does help citizens become informed voters and advocates for important issues. This is what this evening is about, informing our voters. If you are interested in the League, visit their webpage, LWVABCMN.org. Women, men, and young people are invited to join. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not of the League of Women Voters or of the Chamber. LWV posts complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. The candidates will answer 2 introductory questions, which they received in advance, followed by questions submitted by the public via our website and questions of importance to our Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. We'll end with closing statements. Answers are limited to 90 seconds for each of the 2 introductory questions and 1 minute for each of the other questions. Candidates will take turns being the first to answer a question. Bruce Pomerantz is our moderator for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Lund. I'm honored for the trust you're placing in me to be a fair in this forum. To those of you in the audience and who are viewing this online eventually, please note that I live in Fridley and I cannot vote for those candidates in Senate District 31, nor am I acquainted with either of the candidates, nor their friends, nor their opponents that I know of. I will alternate, as Ms. Lund said, between the 2 candidates, but we're going to first begin with the 2 questions which they were given earlier. And I'll start with Mr. Bahr. What is your motivation to run for this office? And what experience or knowledge will help you to serve effectively?
All right, we're live now. There you go. Right, teamwork. So 6 years working in the House, I can take that experience to the Senate. I've developed a lot of interesting relationships on both sides of the aisle, different things I can work on with different issues that do cross aisle. Integrity is something that all of us are interested in, and since I've been there, it's trying to end the omnibus bill, integrity, transparency, so that you, the voter, know exactly what your legislator is voting on, whether they're a senator or a House member. That is something that's near and dear to my heart. The motivation to run is to bring that transparency or the local government back. Too often we see the federal government, which I can't control, or the state government step in and write rules and regulations that take away the power of the county commissioners and the city council members and the mayors to actually effectively, I don't want to say rule, but effectively make rules and legislate or advocate on behalf of their citizens. You know, the people that live in those towns should be able to decide what they want. The city council guys that were just here a minute ago, you repeatedly heard about the Met Council coming in wanting to do different things. So I want to take and make sure we put the reins on the Met Council so that the city councils and the county commissioners can decide what rules fit best for the citizens of their areas.
Would you like me to repeat the question? Okay. What is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you to serve effectively?
Thank you. My motivation has been, I've always been politically minded. I ran for House in 2020, but more than that, I have a huge involvement with nonprofit organizations. I've worked with the Wilder Foundation interviewing those struggling with homeless to find out how they became homeless. Let's correct this before it becomes a pandemic or a problem. I've worked with Habitat for Humanity, building houses that give low-income people a chance to live under a roof. I've packed food for Feed My Starving Children, to bring food across countries to feed people that are dealing with food insecurity. And maybe as my greatest achievement, I've worked with the Multiple Sclerosis Society. I built a corporate team, and over the last 12 years, I've raised over $500,000. My team and I have raised over $500,000 in monetary and in-kind donations. This is about action. And if I can bring action to the community through doing work at the ground level, then I can do it at the House or the Senate level. So I want to take my experience making a change, working with people on an individual level, and ensuring that every person has an equitable chance to not only succeed, but thrive.
And now the next question goes to Mr. Ruffalo. And again, it was given to him, to the two candidates in advance. What are your goals for the future of State Senate District 31?
My goals are simple but complex at the same time. I hear all the time, and I don't disagree, you have to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. You have to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. If we want our neighbors to pick themselves up by the bootstraps, then let's give them the bootstraps by which to do it. Education is central to my campaign. We can reduce crime by increasing education. We can reduce poverty by increasing education. And what I mean is, let's strengthen the education we have, and let's make education more affordable to those who would not otherwise have access to it. The tuition rate in this country, on average, has gone up about 400%. It was subsidized in the 40s, and that is what grew our economy. If we bring in better education and make education, whether it's university or trade school or community college, then we decrease crime, we increase revenue. And the last thing is healthcare. You are not truly free if you are dealing with a life-threatening disease and cannot afford to both feed your family and take the medicine you need and go to the doctors you need in order to achieve that.
Mr. Bahr, what are your goals for the future of State Senate District 31?
So my goal for the district would be to maximize freedom. So limiting as many government regulations as we could possibly reduce, so that you, the individual, have more choice. I have a friend of mine who has 5 children. Every one of those 5 children attend a different school because she knows where her children will thrive. She knows where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, where they will best fit, and how they will then steer them into a career building where they can be prosperous individuals. Somebody who's good with their hands does not need to go to a STEM school and try and be a physicist. Somebody who's highly intelligent shouldn't be in the trades. I mean, not that trades, don't get me wrong, because I'm a tradesperson too. So, but everyone has their talents, what they excel at the most. And the parent is the one, as far as education, the parent is the one that can steer those children the best, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all education system. So limiting limiting the restrictions, I guess, or minimizing the restrictions on where the money goes, so how the children can be educated. The Met Council I've mentioned before, transparency and accountability, the ending of the omnibus bill, so when it comes election time, you can say, that person's voting the way I like them to vote, they're voting my beliefs, or they're voting against my beliefs, and then you can accurately tell what your legislator stands for.
Thank you. The remaining questions are versions of those submitted by the public. Similar questions were consolidated and others were provided for brevity. Each candidate has up to 1 minute, for the most part, to respond. And I'm going to ask the audience to please withhold any applause until the very end so that we can get through as many questions as possible. And now it's for Mr. Bahr to answer the question first. What personal traits do you have that make you well suited for the office?
Personal traits. I would say personal traits, I have an ability to listen and try. I can usually pick out what somebody's trying to tell, even when they're maybe not the most eloquent person. Sorry, don't look at the moderator, yeah. I have a sense of humor. That's something that a lot of people that I work with at the Capitol seem to miss from time to time. You can't, it gets very tense, and sometimes just a light word or something breaks the tension, and then you can actually get past that contentious moment and actually sit down and figure out what the problem is or a possible solution or offer different solutions. So personal traits is I can usually see a solution in places where there aren't. Experience would be that I've already served 6 years in the House, and I can take that over to the Senate and basically hit the ground running.
Thank you. Mr. Ruffalo, what personal traits do you have that make you well suited for this office?
I'll say this. I've been training the military for a couple of years now, and I've really grown to understand how to react to crowds, how to understand what people are looking for, what they need. I really am proud to work with the military. I bring the experience of my time serving the community, as I mentioned before. I certainly bring a level of as an engineer, I have processes. I'm a problem solver. I know how to solve problems. I know how to deal with issues. I know how to do that in a way that we can reduce issues that are being faced, close loopholes if we're wasting spending, put it somewhere else. And I do bring a little bit of light to this. I enjoy being around people. I really enjoy the friends I've met along this path. It's a genuine thing I enjoy doing.
Okay, thank you. All righty, now the next question goes to Mr. Ruffalo to answer first. What is your opinion concerning the level of state local aid for county, city, and townships in Senate District 31?
I think we have to be very cautious about how we operate this, because at the end of the day, what you're looking at is you have levels that you have to move through in terms of where does money get distributed. I was watching another conversation about there was a concern that state level funding didn't make it down to the local levels, and local levels need to budget their local budget based on the promises that they've been made at states and at the state and regional level. I think there needs to be more communication. I think it's embarrassing in some ways that we don't have this communication, because in order to achieve at the local level, you at least have to understand what you're getting at the state level, and if that's not being communicated properly, it falls all the way through and just turns everything into a mess at the bottom.
Mr. Bahr, what is your opinion concerning the level of state, local government aid for counties, cities, and townships in Senate District 31?
Well, to me, the interesting part is there's really only one place the money comes from to start with, and that's the taxpayer. It all comes out of the taxpayer's pocket, whether the state steals it, the city steals it, the county steals it, the federal government steals it. It all comes out of one pocket. It's just a matter of how many fingers it goes through before it gets back down to the actual end user, which would be the cities and the counties. So as far as I'm concerned, the less money the state takes, the more money is left in the individual's pocket. You can leave that taxed at the city and the county level, and then individuals will have a better grasp on exactly where their money is going.
All right. Let's look forward to possibly January 3rd. But in between then, before then, Mr. Bahr, What is your position of a special legislative session to pass bills from the 2022 session before the newly elected candidates take office on January 3rd? 8th, I'm sorry. No, 3rd. It is.
I think that would do a disservice if you're going to have a special session after the election. Now you've got all lame duck legislators that are going to be voting on things that they'll never stand in front of the voters for. I think that's a large disservice to the voting public in general, and I would be opposed to that.
Okay. Mr. Ruffalo, what is your position on a special legislative session to pass bills from the 2022 session before the newly elected candidates take office in January 3rd?
Look, you're a legislator until you're not. And I'll remind everybody in the audience that Barack Obama was removed from the ability to appoint a Supreme Justice because it's upheld in the Senate that was conservative controlled in the interest of, it's too close to the election hadn't even happened yet. And as we got closer and closer to Trump's re-election, they pushed through 2 Supreme Court justices. That's a hypocrisy. Look, you either first of all, pick a lane. And I don't care which one it is, but stick with it and be true to it. Period. My thing, personally, is you are a legislator until you are not a legislator. So if the people need you, that basically what my opponent's saying is, we don't do anything for the people of Minnesota between Election Day and January 3rd. That sounds cushy, and I know that's not what you meant, Cal, but there's got to be a better way. We got to go through to the end.
Okay.
That's all I mean.
All righty. News reports indicate, Mr. Ruffalo, a volatile economy now and perhaps persisting, challenging the small businesses in Senate District 31. Does state government have a responsibility to assist small businesses in these challenging times? And if so, how?
Yes, yes, and yes. My dad was a small business owner. He owned restaurants, and he was a landlord for his entire career. I'm a small business owner. Cal is a small business owner. I have a huge respect for this. We talk about jobs, but we never talk about small businesses. And everybody says we want small businesses, but we don't really act on it. I would legislate to help loan forgiveness, not in the sense of just forgiving loans, but trying to reduce the rates of loan percentages. Providing health care. I had a friend of mine that worked with me at the job I work at, and he left to start his own small business, and because he couldn't get enough health care for his family, he had to go back into the corporate world just to afford health care, and they kept the business open, but it prevented him from expanding his business. We need to help these people to grow these small businesses.
Okay. Mr. Bahr, news reports indicate a volatile economy now and perhaps in the near future, challenging small businesses in Senate District 31. Does state government have a responsibility to assist small businesses in these challenging times, and if so, how?
The state's responsibility would be to afford as much latitude to the business owner as possible so that they can actually run their business. I'm familiar with a lot of the healthcare issues. When I was first elected, that was the issue. The Affordable Care Act had just been passed. Individuals, family of 4, $53,000 out of pocket before you get your first dollar of health care. That's a direct result of government interference in the first place. They destroyed the individual market. So starting the new business or a small business where you have 2 or 3 employees, you can't get into a pool. You're too small to create your own pool. That's all a direct effect of the government interfering in a marketplace that they had no business being in. So in my mind, the state's responsibility to the small business and the business owners is to get out of their way and let them run their business to the maximum degree possible.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Mr. Bahr, given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe versus Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health?
Well, it's an interesting question. First off, let me, I want to maybe clarify, but the decision was the right decision from the Supreme Court. It actually restored some form of federalism. That is never a decision that should have been made at the federal level. We have different levels of government for different reasons. I spoke earlier about cities and counties. The federal government has no role in health care. They have no role in reproductive rights. They have no role in that. That is something that could be at a state or a local level, depending on what the state decides. Right now, we have a Doe v. Gomez ruling in place that says that there is absolutely no change to what we have right now, none. So the legislature would have to pass something. It'd have to go through the court system, so you're talking probably 3-4 years to even get it to the court system. Personally, I believe that life begins at conception, and reproductive rights were when you had sexual intercourse. That was your right, and as far as I can tell, nobody has advocated for any Jim Crow laws. So what the question actually is about, you can have all the reproductive rights you want. We're talking about terminating a life is what we're talking about on the abortion issue. So that's where I'm at, is that unless there's some extenuating circumstance, rape, incest, life of the mother, we should not be using abortion as a mode of contraception.
Okay. Mr. Ruffalo, given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe versus Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health?
I am a man of choice. My opponent just talked about government shouldn't restrict. When it came to small businesses, he wants to lift restrictions. Let's lift this restriction. When the last mass shooting happened down in Texas, I saw so many people on social media saying, we can't restrict guns, it's not going to do anything. Restricting guns is not going to stop people from getting guns. And I asked those people to consider that when it comes to women's abortion rights. And look, nobody is pro-abortion. You know how many abortions I want to see in my life? 0. That wasn't a 3, was it? Was it a 0? Yeah, okay, I didn't know which one you were going with. The point is, women have the right to their own body, and I really think that what we need to do is prevent the abortions that can be prevented, and that's through sexual education in high school and access to contraceptives.
Okay.
Every time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to leave the serious questions for aside briefly and ask what I intend to be a non-intrusive personal question. Mr. Ruffalo, what did you do for your last vacation?
Oh, it depends on how you define a vacation, because I've traveled a lot for work. My last vacation, my girlfriend and I went down to California and just kind of ran up and down the West Coast. I'm a huge baseball fan. I've been to over 20 ballparks just throughout my life. We caught an Angels game down there. We went down to some theme parks, went to Los Angeles, saw San Diego, which is absolutely gorgeous. And I've traveled many, many times since, but as far as a true vacation, that's the last thing I went on. California is beautiful. San Diego, you guys need to move to San Diego. It is just nice. A weatherman in San Diego gets overpaid because it's just 70 and sunny every time. But that was my absolute last vacation I was on. It was a good trip.
Mr. Bahr, what did you do on your last vacation?
Last vacation, I got on the Harley and I packed the tent and I spent 3 weeks on the back of the Harley, and the only destination was to make it to Los Angeles and get on the Pacific Coast Highway and ride it to the Canadian border and come home. That was the only goal. There was no number of miles per day, no pre-planning hotels, nothing. Just me, the Harley, and a tent. And I had I'd been on the Pacific Coast Highway from the Mexican border up to Los Angeles. So I hit Santa Monica and just rode up the coast. Came across North Dakota. It's about a 600-mile day, and one day in California I did 44. So absolutely no pre-planning, no nothing, just enjoying the ocean, the waves, the scenery, the gulls, the sea lions, everything that nature had to offer. Drove the Harley through the tree, all those, the little carved out tree in Northern California. So that was the last vacation I had.
All right. This might be the last question before we go to closing statements, because I have only 4 minutes left. You have talked to constituents, and you heard the questions that were submitted to the League of Women Voters. Is there any topic or issue that you think needs to be addressed, but no one has asked you about yet?
Well, there's a ton of questions. There are a ton of issues that are, and you can't even come close to covering it in a half an hour. Crime is out of control. We have education, people, the education scores are getting worse day by day or year by year as we grade those out. People have less money, less disposable income year over year. It's a plethora of issues that need to be addressed, and in my mind, it's the government is trying to control in one form or fashion and steer, and you can't do that. I mean, I think if memory serves me right, it's praxology, and that's just people react differently to the same inputs. And we all are individuals. We all react differently to things. So to have like a pre-planned economy or a planned this or a planned that, it just doesn't work. You end up creating more problems in the long run than you solve by trying to control everything. So yes, there are a ton of issues that we need to address, but I really appreciate the opportunity this evening to at least cover a couple of those things.
And Mr. Ruffalo, in your campaigning, are there any issues or topics that you feel have to be brought out that no one has thought to ask about?
I'll say this, and I've said this before, what I've indirectly heard or seen in the eyes of people is that we don't have trust in legislation anymore. It's become too partisan, things are not getting done. There was a day in this great country's history where legislation would brag about the things they accomplished. And now they brag about the things and policies they've stopped from going through. And this has made distrust within your common voter exponentially exacerbated. I didn't hear it all the time, but I could see the distrust in people's eyes. I could see that they weren't quite invested, maybe disenfranchised. This has to stop. We need to put our swords down and get things done so that we're working for the people and not just to keep our jobs in the next election cycle.
Okay, and now for your closing statements. And Mr. Ruffalo, it is your time to go first.
Well, again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I want to thank everybody who's here, you in TV land. I'm glad to see you as well. I had a father that owned small businesses, and I grew up with a respectable upbringing. I moved to Minnesota about 13 years ago. I got very involved with my community. I've been happy to train our military on a daily basis on how to fix safely generators so that when they're abroad, they know how to do it properly and safely. I have the techniques and skills to solve problems as an engineer, and most importantly, I'm passionate about doing that. I want results. That being said, I do look for your vote November 8th, and if you want any more information, I ask you to please to jasonruffalo.com. I want to thank Cal. I'm sorry I didn't do that in my opening part of my ending statement, but I do want to thank everybody for being here, and with that, I turn it over to Cal.
Your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I will also thank Jason. You know, if you did catch tonight, we can laugh, we can have fun. Uh-oh, we're up, time's up. So it doesn't have to be contentious all the time. We do have things we agree on. That same animosity that voters have to distrust of government, I've seen it. It's the same thing. And it's the omnibus bill is where it's prevalent. It's not the only thing. Another piece is the legislature has surrendered their authority to the agencies or through the governor. There's a lot of different rules that are put in place. One of the little simple ones that I think is ridiculous. Husband and wife used to go get a fishing license, and you get a little lower cost for a husband-wife fishing license. The DNR, because the legislature surrendered their authority to them, DNR wrote rules and says both the husband and wife have to show up at the same time to buy a husband-wife license, when in the past only one would. That's just ridiculous. Why are we doing silly things like that? That's a disservice. So, yes, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for their hosting this debate tonight. Maybe you guys can call the governor's office, because I'd really like to see the governor candidates debate before I go to the ballot box. I mean, I think that would be a good thing for all of us to see them head to head. Yes, I would like to that, and I guess I hit the stop sign, so thank you all for coming this evening.
Thank you, candidates, for speaking to voters about issues and for running in the election for Senate District 31. Thanks to our co-sponsor, the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce, for the work that they did to organize this event. The Chamber and the League thank NorthMetro TV for their video. Voters out there and in here in the audience, if you are confused or wish to know what is on your ballot before you go into the voting booth, go to mnvotes.gov, minvotes.gov. You can obtain your ballot there, a sample ballot. You'll be able to make sure that you are registered. You'll be able to register there. You'll find your voting location. And thank you for your attendance tonight. Now you may vote.